Well, just days after announcing that the House will vote on immigration measures next week, Speaker Paul Ryan is now weighing in on the separation of immigrant children from their families at the border. He was asked today if he supports that policy.
No, I'm not. This is because of a court ruling. And so this, I do think, ought to be addressed. We believe it should be addressed in immigration legislation. So what's happening at the border and the separation of parents and their children is because of a court ruling. That's why I think legislation is necessary.
Well, this comes as we get a look inside a Texas shelter that's housing more than 1,000 young immigrants who've been separated from their families at the border with Mexico. The shelter is already filled past capacity. A former Walmart in Brownsville, Texas, is now the new temporary home for at least 1,500 immigrant boys, just a mile north from the U.S. and Mexico border. It's called Casa Padre. A new Washington Post article takes us inside the facility, equipped with classrooms, recreation centers, and medical examination rooms. But many have criticized it, saying that it is eerily similar to a detention center. Joining me now to talk about this, Emma Brown joins us from Washington. She's a Washington Post reporter who co-wrote that article. So, Emma, tell me a little bit about the conditions that are inside the facility.
Sure. Well, as you said, this is a converted Walmart. So you walk through the sliding, sort of whispery Walmart doors, and inside the old McDonald's is a cafeteria. The loading docks have been turned into a movie theater where kids were watching Moana yesterday. There have been, walls erected to create hallways and rooms where children sleep in 4 or 5 to a room. And so, there are clues of this sort of past of this building, the very tall ceilings and so on, but it has been sort of converted into this industrial place where children are being held.
Tell me a little bit, how young exactly are the children, and what are really the circumstances that led them to their situation?
So Casa Padre is licensed by the state of Texas to hold children between the ages of 10 and 17. So many of the children there are older, teenagers who have come, as they have been for years, came by themselves to the border, fleeing, many of them, gang violence and other violence in their home countries. Some of the children, though, and a growing proportion of the children, are those who came to the border with their families and were then separated under the Trump administration's new zero tolerance policy, where parents are put in the criminal prosecution, put in jail while they are going through that, and children are taken to shelters. So they're children from both situations who are there at Casa Padre.
So they spend 2 hours outside each day. It seems a little bit limited for a child. What are the other restrictions they have to comply with?
I mean, it's a place it's an institution, right? So it's a place that's full of rules. I mean, there are yellow lines on the floor that children are supposed to walk on when they move from place to place. There are rules in the cafeteria about when you can get up and so on. There are, each child assigned certain belongings, a certain number of T-shirts and socks, and so it is a place that is full of rules. There are 2 phone calls a week that the child may make, and so what we have heard from advocates is that it can take a very long time for children to connect with their parents who are in ICE detention or criminal facilities.
Emma, your reporting says that Casa Padre has actually doubled its population between April and May of this year. The numbers went from 542 to more than 1,000. Why the spike?
Right. I mean, this is one of the most incredible things, I think, about Casa Padre, and it's sort of illustrative of what's happening at the border. 15 months ago, this was not open yet. There were 0 children here. It was just an empty shell of a Walmart. And now, as you said in the introduction there are nearly 1,500 boys. They're all boys who are housed here. And so that big spike happened between April and May of this year. And that is when the Trump administration announced this new zero tolerance policy. So the big jump coincided with the announcement of the policy that resulted in the separation of so many more families. But advocates have been telling us, that this has actually been going on for months, long before the official announcement. So, it's a combination of that new policy, of a sort of new wave of young migrants who are coming from Central America. Those 2 trends are sort of coming together to create this boom.
And do we know what happens next for these kids?
I mean, they are waiting to be reunified, either with family or close friends who are already here in the United States, or with their parents who may be in detention. So some of them, the average wait at Casa Padre was 49 days, according to the folks who run that shelter for the federal government. But some children, we have heard from advocates, stay for months until when they have trouble locating somebody to reunify them with.
Emma Brown with Washington Post. Emma, thank you so much for your reporting and for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
The White House continues to face tough questions about its immigration policies, in particular about facilities in Texas being used to house migrant children. Megan Roberts is following the story for us this morning. So Megan, what do we know about the tent city in question?
Well, this particular city, Natasha, is in Tornillo, Texas. It houses young men 16 and 17 years old. Now, these young men are considered unaccompanied minors. So they came to the border crossing by themselves alone, and then they were apprehended by the United States government. They are being moved to this tent city that you can see images of there right on your screen right there. They're being moved there to make room at other facilities for more children who have been separated, younger children who have been separated from their parents at the border. We've been getting a glimpse into some of those facilities throughout the week, but this is the first time we've seen or heard of anything from this tent city that was constructed to try to make more room, try to make more space for all of the migrant children in the United States right now. And two United States politicians were among the first in there. Republican Will Hurd, Democrat Mary Gonzalez, both from Texas, and this is what they had to say about what they saw.
This is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. Mary's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. This is an American issue.
Where does it stop? This is not a long-term sustainable solution.
Now, Hurd says conditions in the tents are good. The young men are treated well. Each tent houses 20 teens as well as 2 adults to supervise. There's showers, there's bathrooms, there's medical facilities, there's a cafeteria. Right now, that tent city has 400 beds, and they expect 360 of those to be in use shortly. But Hurd says it's his understanding that facility could house up to 4,000 people, which he calls, quote, absolutely nuts. Natasha.
Megan, give us a sense of the context. How does it get to the point where there are tent cities popping up in the United States to house migrant children?
Well, it goes back to the heart of this new zero tolerance policy by the Trump administration. They're calling for a crackdown on adults that are trying to cross into the United States illegally, and they are calling for those adults to be federally prosecuted, which causes them to lose custody of the children that came with them across the border. So we have this influx of sometimes very young children that are being separated unexpectedly from their parents. So now you have two groups of minors within the United States. You have the gentlemen we were just talking about, the men we were just talking about who crossed the border alone, and then you have these children that were separated from their parents. Everything is so full that they're creating these tent cities to try to make more room. And just to put it into context, over the span of 6 weeks in April and May, 1,995 children were separated from their parents. We understand that number is growing, so we're certainly going to keep an eye on all of the developments to this story to see what else may pop up to help house these children.
It's not just Washington lawmakers challenging hardline tactics. Local politicians are also speaking out. Among them, the mayor of Houston. He calls the policy morally bankrupt.
Number one, I don't support the policy. I don't support the policy of stripping children away from their families. This is Father's Day weekend. It's all about celebrating family. I don't want in the city of Houston for us to be participating in a policy that I think is morally bankrupt. This is not about party. It's not about Democrat, Republican, nothing about that. It's about valuing children.
Mayor Turner is also urging the owner of that property to take a stand and make sure that the facility is not used to tear children away from their families. For a closer look at this migrant crackdown, we're joined now by Jeff Mason. He is the Reuters White House correspondent, and he joins us from Washington. So Jeff, welcome to you. Let's talk about this week, because the critical thing in the debate this week is getting that inside look inside some of those detention centers, in front of some of those tent cities. How has the ability to see how people are living, particularly children, changed the way the conversation is taking place around this issue?
Well, it's certainly getting a lot of play, Natasha, and it's getting a lot of attention here in Washington, in addition to around the country. You saw tensions sort of explode in the White House press room last week as a result of this issue, and you will see the debate in the halls of Congress really go at it this week as Republican lawmakers are working on an immigration bill, a couple immigration bills, in fact, one of which sort of addresses this problem, along with many of the issues that President Trump has been wanting to address on immigration. So last Friday, he created a little bit of controversy by saying in an interview with Fox and Friends that he would not sign the more moderate of two immigration bills that Republicans are working on. But then the White House concluded the day by saying actually he would. So the big question will be whether or not that bill gets any traction this coming week. And honestly, whether or not it does enough to address the problem that you're just talking about, which is these children who have been separated from their parents.
Now, we also heard from the president earlier in the week where he said he hates seeing these children separated from their parents. He's describing it as inhumane. And then he says he's actually just following the Democrats' orders, that it was in fact the Democratic Party and the previous administration that brought in these policies. What do you make of that?
Well, that is not true. In fact, it's the own Department of Homeland Security from President Trump's administration that has said recently that some 2,000 children have been separated from their parents just in the last 6 weeks. And that is as a result of the policy that Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced, which is a zero tolerance policy for people who are crossing the border illegally. And that means everyone who does cross that border has to be prosecuted under the zero tolerance policy. And when you're prosecuted as an adult, then your children, if they are accompanying you across the border illegally, are being separated from you. So, President Trump likes to find diversions, and he likes to blame either, in this case, the opposition party, often also the press. But it's factually inaccurate to say that this is a Democratic policy. It is, in fact, his administration's policy, and they could change it if they wanted to.
Now, President Trump is scheduled to meet with House Republicans on Tuesday to discuss this very issue. Do you have a sense of what's going to be on that agenda, what that conversation is going to be like?
Well, I think it's going to be about the broader immigration bill that we were talking about a little bit earlier, and whether or not they have the votes and the support to get that passed. Democrats have been critical of their efforts because they don't, think it goes far enough to help these children that we've been talking about, but also doesn't go far enough to help the so-called dreamers who were children or men and women brought by their parents to the United States as children who have been living in this country ever since and are looking for a way to become citizens without the threat of deportation. President Trump has been pushing since he was a candidate and now since he's been in the White House for an immigration solution that includes a border wall and some other more conservative policies on immigration. So he'll be no doubt talking about that and seeing whether they can get some traction. One of the interesting political pieces to this is that the Republicans are pushing for this solution now because there's probably a concern amongst their ranks that it could hurt them politically during the midterm elections in November.
Jeff, we spoke with a former agent who had to carry out missions like this where you're separating these children who are crossing the border illegally, and he described it as being inhumane, and he said it was ineffective. Do you have any sense of whether, in fact, this zero tolerance policy is deterring people from crossing the border?
Well, I don't have any figures in front of me. I know that the president, since coming into office, has been sort of proud to say that those crossings had come down. But as I recall, having seen figures not too long ago, that dip in the crossings went up again this year. So without going back and checking those numbers myself, I don't want to say, but I do know that it's the intention of this administration to have an effect on those numbers. And in fact, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, when he announced the zero tolerance policy, which included this child separation issue, made very clear that the point in that was to say, hey, look, if you're going to cross into the United States, this is what's going to happen.
Good morning, Facebook family and friends, my faithful loyal YouTube subscribers. Today it is Monday, It is June 18th, the year is 2018. We're about 2 days from the beginning of the start of summer. I want to read a quote. First they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. I never thought in my life that I would live to see concentration camps being built in the United States. And that's exactly what we're watching. To take Walmart stores, tents in the middle of a desert, and create a tent city to house people in modern day concentration camps. The Trump administration has got to be the most evilest, the most evil people, just downright disgusting evil people we've ever had in United States office in recent years. And we've had some evil people, but this takes the cake. And those people who support this food, the people who see nothing wrong with this, they're the dumbest people on planet Earth. America has really shown it's showing who it truly is, and it is not pretty. So I've known about this country for a very long time, and I know what kind of country we're living in. Now more and more people are beginning to witness and spy and see for themselves the evil that resides in this country. And the people who support this, and I've seen a lot of trolls on the internet who support this mess. I'm praying and hoping they just 16-year-old kids who don't know no better with fake profiles and they just trolling. But anybody who supports little children being separated from their parents is insane. But we got a lot of insane people living in the United States today, including one in the White House. A liar, a manipulator, an insane individual that people voted for. Crazy people voted for this man. And this is what we got to live with until he gets... It took 3 years for Richard Nixon to be... to force him to resign from the White House. It's going to take a little time, but I'm pretty confident Donald Trump will not make it through his first term. And for good reason. Look around you. This man is insane. And the people who support him are just as crazy as hell. There's no one in their right mind should have support children being separated from their parents. I don't care how they came into the United States. And before black folks started yelling and screaming about black children being separated from families, they were I have friends who work for the Children's Department of Human Services here in Georgia, and they work very hard to keep these families together. But in many instances, these parents don't want the children. That's why you have a foster care system filled with black children, because their parents just didn't want them. And they work very hard to try to keep these families together. So for the Trump administration to make a decision to separate small minor children from their parents just shows you what type of evil people they are. And if you think those detention camps and that Walmart is a pretty place, you're a fool. You're a heartless individual who doesn't know anything about being held captive. We got some ignorant people running around this country today. It is shocking to me, the shit that I've read by ignorant, nasty, horrible, evil people who think that this is fine. And it isn't. It's a bunch of sad-ass people here. I'm not going to spend much time on this because I don't have time. There's too much hate. It doesn't make much sense to read those reports and see that stuff. And to see the people who support it is mind-boggling. But these are the same nasty, disgusting, evil, racist, vile, horrible individuals who voted for this food. And they're horrible people. If you voted for Donald Trump, you're a fool. And you're a horrible individual. And I'm a terrible person. A racist, and in your heart is evil, and you support this mess. You're disgusting. Anybody who supports this bullshit is insane. These children don't deserve that. Those parents in distress, these minor children are being separated because there's a way to handle it. You know, when we look over the years about these immigrants traveling from all over the world to the United States, it was never once like the immigrants who came here with open arms. Well, my ancestors didn't come here as immigrants. Of course, they were forced here to this country. The United States has never been a good place for minorities. It's always been a horrible place where you've had to fight to survive. But to see how evil this is in 2018, and to see that people actually support this bull crap. They think it makes sense. Heartless, evil individuals whose souls are lost. And nothing we can do about these lost souls. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this. I have other stuff I need to do, and I'm saddened by this. Really saddened by what I'm watching. And I see people are outraged, and I see the protesters are saying something to tear families apart. And then they make the comment that the average family is maybe separated about on average of 50 days. I like to see that. I think it's going to take long. I think this is just the beginning of these concentration camps, and they're going to grow. You know, it's funny. I've heard about these Walmarts that are going to be used and built for this purpose. And sometimes we think that this stuff is false. And then when you see it, you say, oh my gosh, it's true. I wonder who owns that Walmart store now. Is it still owned by the Walmart family? Is the government purchases from them? Are they getting some type of residual income from this? A lot of questions to go through my mind in regards to this old Walmart being used. But I know how evil people are. And there's some evil motherfuckers in this country. Evil, greedy, nasty, horrible people who try everything in their power to stay in control. But that's just who they are. Anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because there's nothing really I can say other than that I'm disgusted by what I saw. It made me sick to my stomach to see these reports, to see these children being separated, and for people to think that this is okay, that this makes sense. No child under the age of 4 years of age should be separated from their parents. I don't care how they got here. They even have little small minor children, babies, who should be with their mothers, who should be being breastfed by their mothers. At a very important time in their life, they're separated because of ignorance, hate, foolishness. And for those of you who think these migrants who cross the border are watching CNN, you a fool, you another dumbass motherfucker. You think they sitting down there watching CNN and knowing that when they cross this border, all this foolishness is going to greet them? They're listening to the streets. And they hear America's a safe place to go to get away from wherever they're running from. And we don't know what they're running from. But if you ever stop and talk to some of these people, you'll find out they're running from a horrible life. And they see this country as a great place where they can start a new life. That's why they're coming here. They're not coming here to rob, but still they're coming here to work. And they want a different life. And on the streets, that's what everybody's saying. But they don't know when they cross the border, the hell that they're going to run into with these evil people waiting there to greet them. I cannot wait for Donald Trump's term to be over because I want them to quickly get him. And I think we might have a president here for the first time who might end up serving federal prison time. Good. That's what he needs to be. He's just a disgusting individual. And he needs to be in federal prison. He's a horrible person. And all his administration, this damn Jim Sessions or Jeff Sessions, is another horrible racist. And people support these fools. Frightening. But it's to be expected. This is the United States of America. I expect this type of behavior from these motherfuckers. Because that's who their hearts are. That's how they have always operated. They're not your friends. They don't mean well for nobody but themselves. They're just disgusting individuals. And they always will be. If you like my videos, click like, share them with family members and friends. Love to read you all's comments. I'm tired of the trolls coming on here. I've just started deleting. I've deleted so many messages from you trolls. I was going to start limit the comments so I can control them more. And I think that might be best for all these videos from here on out because these trolls are just getting on my damn nerves. So I just have to start monitoring the comments and control. You're not going to come on my YouTube channel with all that foolishness. Your comments will be deleted. Anyway, today it is Monday, June 18th. The year is 2018. I'm out of here and enjoy your Monday.